I'm Dr. Duke, and I'm joined today by Luis Miguel, who has written a lot on a number of important issues. Luis is a contributor to the New American Magazine. Luis, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, glad to be here.
Among the many stories you've written, and I find them all quite interesting, the one that's kind of caught my attention is the work you've done researching Ilhan Omar, the first-term Democrat congresswoman from the state of Minnesota. Give us a little background about who she is and her role on the squad before we get into her personal life.
Sure. Well, a lot of people know her for her comments on 9/11. Some people did something. She's Somali-born, so born outside the U.S., naturalized U.S. citizen, who is now a member of Congress. She came into power over Minnesota, took over a seat held by Keith Ellison, in large part thanks to support of a growing Somali community over there. And she, along with other members of the squad, like AOC and Rashida Tlaib, have really made a name for themselves in one, opposing the agenda of Donald Trump, and two, becoming real pushers of progressivism in the Democratic Party, pushing it further left than a lot of mainstream Democrats have been willing to do.
Yeah, and she's part of the squad, right? The infamous squad with Tlaib you mentioned and some other radicalized women. Here's my first question to you. How does her commitment to Islam and her radical left-wing politics, how do they fit together? I mean, one would think that her devotion to pushing Islamic issues and her radical left-wing politics would put the two ideas in conflict with each other, but they don't seem to for her. How is that possible?
Well, it's a very interesting combination, and you can see that in how, on one hand, she has a very devout, according to her, Muslim faith, but at the same time, she just filed for divorce the other week, and obviously, there's the allegations she's been having an affair with a man who was her former political consultant. That's a very good question, Duke, and it comes back really to an important point to consider when you think about the left's current alliance with Islam. It has a lot of people perplexed because there's a lot of fundamentalist aspects of Islam that at first glance, seem incompatible with the radical social agenda pushed by Democrats or socialists. But at the end of the day, one thing that people need to understand is that the incompatibility doesn't actually exist. Because you see, leftists and socialists, even though they may claim to be atheists and against all religions, the truth is, it isn't all religion that they're really against. It's always Christianity that is a chief target of theirs. So anything that allows them to attack and destroy Christianity, even if it's another faith like Islam or New Ageism or other kinds of modern spirituality or alternate religions, are perfectly game for them, so long as it helps it to attain that purpose and that goal.
I'm glad you said that, Luis, because I've long thought the same thing. I believe that your enemy of your enemy is your friend, right? And so what seems to be an odd alliance between the Progressive Party, radical socialists, and Islam is really a joint attack on Judeo-Christian values. I think you're exactly right. I also think that what the radical progressives and the radical Islamists have in common is the idea of collectivism and top-down statist government. And so both of them have elements of fascism in them, in the sense that we think about Islamofascism, we think about the growing fascist movement, the Antifa fighting fascist by being fascist. There's a certain collectivist mentality and a certain dictatorial strain to government that they both share. And so I think there is something compatible between the two of them. Your most interesting work recently, I think, though, is investigating Ilhan Omar for perhaps immigration fraud, for all of this mess about who she was married to and her brother and all that stuff. Can you lay out for us what's going on with her personal life, Ilhan Omar?
Sure. Well, the belief has long been, it's been supported by lots of different sources from within the Somali community that's within her constituency. The belief has been that she was married to her brother, who is a British citizen, in order to help him immigrate to the U.S. And so her current husband, the one she's divorcing right now, is a man by the name of Ahmed Hirsi. They married early 2000s, but only under an Islamic ceremony. They weren't legally married initially. Around 2008, she married a man by the name of Ahmed Nurset Elmi. Now, this man she was with for just a few years, and they ended up getting separated but not divorced around 2011, 2012. They ended up getting divorced legally in 2017. The next year, she legally married Hersey, her husband, for the first time. Although she and Hersey had already gotten back together and had a child in 2012. And now the belief that or that she was married, that Elmi was her brother, has come out from a lot of people who actually know them and are familiar with the family in the community. And recently, you just had this post on social media. It was from 2013. It was made by Omar. And so what's interesting about it is that in this post, she identified her father's first name as Nurset. Now, a lot of people, she claims that her father's name is Nur Omar Mohammed. Although, interestingly, there's a City Pages article that was written on Omar in 2016 that named her father as Nurset Elmi Mohammed. But that article was later edited, revised to say Nur Omar Mohammed. The reason this is significant is because in Somali naming practices, a child is given a name, a three-part name, in which the first name is a chosen name, the second name, the middle name, is the father's first name, and the last name, the third name, is the paternal grandfather's first name. And so if her father's name is in fact Nurset, then that would be her husband, the one that people claim is her brother. His name is Ahmed Nurset Elmi. And so you see there the connection that they would have a shared father through the same father's name.
It's really interesting. And what Luis, what does this mean in terms of current American immigration law? What might she be guilty of in terms of violation? And at this point, what might be done if we do find that kind of fraud in her personal life?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, she would be subject to charges of immigration fraud and ultimately to deportation. It tells us that there's a lot of work to do. You know, their family came in through a refugee program, and people have been saying for years and years that we need to get a handle on the refugee issue and how we process people. President Trump ran on that and has tried to accomplish it, but there's a lot of opposition from the left for good reason, for reasons like this, trying to protect people like Omar and bring more people like her into the country. And so obviously, you know, we know what should happen, whether it will, you know, not as long as Democrats control the House and as long as spineless Republicans are there aiding and abetting.
You know, the irony and the tragedy of all of this in modern American government is the fact that she's an elected congresswoman makes it actually much harder to come after her. That's the thing that's so problematic about this, right? That if she were an ordinary citizen, she very might well have been deported already. But because she not just broke immigration laws, but falsified and engaged in fraudulent behavior, flat out lied potentially to get other people into this country, and she's now elected to public office, she seems almost to some degree untouchable, not just because you have Democrat control of Congress, but as you said, spineless Republicans. And so we've got about a minute left. Give me your final thoughts on this. What would you do if you were in charge of an investigation of her? How would you go about it, and what recommendations would you make?
I mean, probably the biggest thing, that there's a huge weak point right now, and that is her husband, the man who is soon to be her ex-husband. If you look at some of the reporting that's out there from different websites like Alpha Pages and others, there's a lot of reporting that, for one, she had him, Ahmed Hersey, fired from his most recent job working for a city official over in Minnesota. She had him fired in order to keep him quiet. And the people close to him are saying that he's actually very disgruntled with her. He knows that she broke immigration law, and he doesn't want to go down with her, but he's keeping up appearances because she hasn't threatened that if she goes down, he goes down with her.
Very interesting. And so, as in the case where we had Barack Obama's own brother speaking out from Kenya about certain aspects of the falseness of some of Obama's narratives, we now have this former husband. To what other degree he's related to her, we will find out, I suppose, at some point. But we have a situation where the ex-husband, disgruntled, may be able to turn state's evidence, if I may use that term, and get to the bottom of this. I hope it certainly happens. Luis Miguel, thank you so much for your reporting on this. The mainstream media isn't interested. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Luis Miguel, a major contributor to the New American Magazine, thanks for joining us today.